Every detail was planned, down to the final lie. Welcome to Marshshadowfiles. I am your host, Oliver Vane. Tell me where you're tuning in from below. Your words matter here. Let's uncover it. Saul wasn't at home, which was no shock. Men like Saul Panzer are as likely to be where you want them as trout are to be in a bathtub. I left word at 2 numbers, 1 apartment, 1 office, and a 3rd place I won't name because Saul liked to pretend it didn't exist. Then I called the foundation and got a woman with the voice of a person who had spent the day keeping disasters in alphabetical order. Yes, Mr. Voss had returned. No, Miss Rowe had not. No message. Yes, the police had been considered. No, not yet called. Yes, that was all. When I went back to the office, Voss was putting on his gloves, as Wolfe had shifted 1 inch farther into his chair, which with him is the equivalent of crossing a state line. "You are going?" I asked Voss. "Yes. Mr. Wolfe told me to remain available and otherwise to do nothing conspicuous." That must have hurt. He let it pass. "Where shall I be reached?" Wolfe spoke before I could. "At your residence for the next hour, at your office thereafter, and after 7:30 at the Calderon house if you are fool enough to continue preparations for a dinner that is shedding integrity like dandruff. The event can't be cancelled on rumor. It may be cancelled on reality." Wolfe's lids lowered. "Address?" Voss gave it. East 62nd Street, a cooperative with the kind of discreet doorman who can smell scandal through brass. And he added 2 telephone numbers from memory and said he would inform his staff that Archie Goodwin might ask questions. "Might?" I said. "I feel the urge already." He gave me a level look. "Then begin with Miss Rowe's apartment. She lives at 19 Grove Street, 3rd floor rear. You know it well?" Again that tiny pause. "Well enough." "Uh-huh." He turned to Wolfe. "There is one other thing." "An unfortunate phrase," Wolfe muttered. "Proceed." "The place card?" "The wording on it. He should have been seated facing the door." "That may refer to a specific conversation. Last week, Miss Rowe argued with one of the trustees about the placement of Nathaniel Brundage." "Who?" "A donor, elderly, wealthy, vain, and convinced the world is divided between those who revere him and those who envy him. He insisted on a central position at the dinner, as Miss Rowe refused." "Why?" "She said he must not have sightline advantage." I blinked. Sightline advantage. What was this dinner, the Congress of Vienna? Voss actually looked embarrassed by the phrase. Miss Rowe was exact. Wolfe's eyes sharpened. "Did she explain?" "She said that a man who watched doors instead of people changed the behavior of the room." Wolfe grunted. "Sensibly said." "Did Brundage object?" "He was furious." "Anyone else present?" "Yes. Celia Cormant, Julian Haft, Miss Rowe, myself." "Julian Haft?" "Our development counsel. He handles donor negotiations." Wolfe's finger tapped the desk once. "Names, Archie. We may as well begin collecting them." "Mr. Voss, before you leave, I write down every person with direct interest in this dinner and in Miss Rowe's disgrace or absence." Voss took the pen I handed him and wrote in a compact, disciplined hand. Adrian Voss himself, which earned him 1 point. Celia Cormant, board chair. Julian Haft, donor counsel. Nathaniel Brundage, trustee and donor. Evelyn Calderon, hostess, widow, possessor of the residence and probably half the silver south of Harlem. Leon Tappan, a theatrical designer recently attached to the foundation in some decorative capacity. He slid the list back. 5, I said. "A neat circle." "Nothing neat about it," Wolfe said. Voss collected his coat and hat and went out. I took him to the door. On the threshold he stopped and looked at me with that same dry, controlled stare. "If you find her," he said, "call me first." "Before the police?" "Yes. That depends." "On what?" on whether finding her improves your position or hers. For the first time, the mask slipped enough for me to see real fatigue under it. Mr. Goodwin, I'm trying to prevent harm. Sure, I said. The question is to whom? He left without answering. When I got back to the office, Wolfe had the place card in his hand again. He was holding it by the edge as if it might prove infectious. Well? I asked. Well, what? Mr. Voss is polished, withheld, self-interested, and probably frightened. The only uncommon feature is that he has managed to be all four at once without becoming incoherent. You forgot useful. Did I? He gave us names and a disappearance. Either might have come later. I sat. You know her. He shut his eyes. That was answer enough to make me wait. Wolfe never shuts his eyes to avoid a question. He shuts them because the answer annoys him. Yes, he said finally. A little. How little? Enough for my comfort to be impaired. With a name like November Rowe, I'd have remembered if she'd been in this office. She was not in this office. That was better and worse. Then where? He opened his eyes and scowled. Archie, there are persons in New York with whom one occasionally exchanges words without recording them in ledgers. She was present at a dinner 3 years ago here for a publisher and his wife. She spoke intelligently for 4 minutes on the arrangement of adversaries at table. I replied. She sent me a note the next day correcting an error I had not made. I stared. And that stuck with you? It would have stuck with a goat. She was impertinent, accurate, and concise. Your favorite bouquet? He ignored that. 6 months later, she sent another note, asking whether I believed social order could be used as coercion, absent explicit threat. I did not answer. The question was foolish. Was it? No, it was merely insolent to ask it of me by post. I leaned back. So she knew enough about you to send Voss here. She knew enough to know I dislike manipulation that pretends to be etiquette. It is among the more nauseating forms of power because it recruits cowardice as an accessory. Coming from Wolfe, that was practically a sermon. The door opened and Fritz came in with a tray. Coffee for me, beer for later, and a plate with thin sandwiches because he believed inquiry should not entirely excuse metabolism. He set it down and looked from Wolfe to me. A new case? He asked. Maybe, I told him. See, Fritz pursed his lips. Then I shall move dinner from 7:30 to 8. A source should not be punished for crime. See, I said to Wolfe after Fritz left. Justice lives. Wolfe was staring at the list of names Voss had written. Archie, go to Grove Street, speak to the landlady, the neighbors, and anyone in the vicinity with eyes, then the foundation if time permits. You think she vanished voluntarily? I think the word vanished is a lazy one. People go, are taken, hide, sulk, bargain, collapse, scheme, or die. They do not vanish. Comforting. Take the card. I picked it up. For comparison, for irritation, and if Saul reports before you return, I shall try not to misplace him. I got my coat, my hat, and the little notebook that has paid for itself 100 times over. At the front door, I glanced back. Wolfe had already turned away from me and toward the list, with the look of a man who had been offered a distasteful dish and had decided, for reasons private and sufficient, to eat it anyway. By the time I got to Grove Street, the rain had started. One of those thin March drizzles that don't seem worth naming until you discover your collar has surrendered. The building at number 19 was a brick walk-up with ambitions above its income. The vestibule smelled of old steam, floor wax, and somebody's onions. I rang the bell for the superintendent and got a woman in a purple house dress with hard gray curls and the expression of one who could spot delinquency by the shape of a doorknob. Yes, she said. I showed my card. Archie Goodwin, I want to ask about Miss November Rowe. Her face changed, not much but enough. You another one? That stopped me. How many have there been? She sniffed. 2 before you. 1 man, 1 woman. Neither of them said please. That's a sin in some neighborhoods, I told her. What time? Man came about 2:30. Woman around 4. Descriptions? The man was tall, not fat, not thin, coat like it cost something. Hat pulled down too careful, like he thought he was being clever. The woman, she paused, considering. Smart. Not pretty like a movie, but the kind that knows where everything is in a room before she sits down. That narrows it to half the city. She didn't like that. You want help or jokes? I want both. Start with help. The man asked if Miss Rowe had come in. I told him no. He asked if she had callers. I said I don't keep a book. He asked what time she left this morning. And I said I don't sit on the stairs counting. He gave me a look like I'd failed him personally and went upstairs anyway. Upstairs? 3rd floor. I followed. He didn't touch the door. Just stood there, looking at it. Then he came down and left. That's all? He asked if there was a back way. I told him yes, for tenants. He went out the front. I made a note. And the woman? She knew Miss Rowe. Didn't say her name, but she said November like she had a right to it. Asked if she was in. I said no. She asked if anyone had come asking. I told her about the man. She didn't like that. How could you tell? She went still, like a cat that hears something inside the wall. Did she go upstairs? No. She stood there thinking, then asked if Miss Rowe had left anything for her. I said not with me. Now she wrote something on a slip of paper and asked me to give it to Miss Rowe if she came in. You still have it? She gave me a look that said she wasn't careless. Then she turned, opened a drawer in a little table by the radiator, and handed me a folded scrap. Don't lose it, she said. I don't like being in the middle of things. Neither do I said, which wasn't true. I opened it. 2 words, written in a firm, elegant hand. Don't comply. No signature. That all? I asked. That's all? Did you recognize her? No, but she wasn't the kind that comes here by accident. That helps. It should. I folded the paper and slipped it into my pocket. You got a key to Miss Rowe's place? I do. But I don't let strangers in without reason. I've got reason, I said, and showed her my license. It isn't magic, but it helps. She studied it, then me, then shrugged. If anything's missing, I'll say you took it. Fair. We went up. 3rd floor, rear. The hall was narrow, the kind that remembers every footstep. She unlocked the door and stood aside. 10 minutes, she said. I don't like doors open. Me neither. I went in and closed it. Miss Rowe's apartment was small and exact. A living room with a desk by the window, a chair angled not toward the street, but toward the door, which I noticed at once. A bookcase with titles that leaned toward psychology and history. A side table with a single lamp and no clutter. A narrow hallway leading to a bedroom and a kitchen that looked as if it had never been surprised. I stood still for a moment. Rooms talk if you give them the chance. Nothing had been tossed. No drawers open, no cushions displaced. If there had been a search, and it had been done by someone who believed disorder was a confession. I crossed to the desk. On it, a blotter, a pen, a small stack of envelopes, and a calendar. I checked the calendar first. Monday circled. Dinner. Nothing else written, but the week before had notes in a shorthand that meant something to her and nobody else. I opened the top drawer. Stationery, stamps, a sealed envelope addressed to J.H. I left it. I'm not a saint, but I don't break seals without Wolfe's say-so unless the building is on fire. Second drawer, a notebook, blue, not black. Not the one Voss said was taken. This one was clean, unused. I moved to the bookcase. One shelf had a gap that didn't belong. Books settle like teeth. You notice when one is gone. I bent and checked the lower shelf. There it was, lying flat behind two others, sung as if it had been slid out and then pushed back in a hurry. I pulled it free. The Social Animal. Not exactly a thriller. I opened it, halfway through a folded paper. Not hidden well, hidden quickly. I unfolded it. A list. Names in a column. Voss, Cormont, Haft, Brundage, Calderon, Tappan. Next to each, a word or two. Not flattering. Voss, control/conceal. Cormont, replace/leverage. Haft, broker/split loyalties. Brundage, vanity/surveillance. Calderon, house/optics. Tappan, decor/access. At the bottom, one more line, separate. Seat wolf, facing the door. I stared at that for a second, then put it back exactly as I'd found it and returned the book to its place. If she had hidden it from someone who didn't know her well enough to look in the right spot, or from someone she expected to search quickly. And I went to the bedroom, bed made, clothes in order, nothing on the floor. The closet was neat, too neat. One dress missing. Maybe. I'm not an expert on dresses, but there was a space that looked intentional. The kitchen had a single plate in the rack, clean and dry. No coffee grounds in the sink. No sign she had eaten breakfast there. Back in the living room, I stood again and looked at the chair angled toward the door. I moved it a fraction and then put it back. People arrange their lives the way they arrange their furniture. She wanted to see who came in. There was a faint scuff on the floor near the threshold, as if a heel had pivoted sharply. Not a struggle. A decision. I opened the door. The woman in purple was right there, like she had been listening with her airs and her patience. "Well?" she asked. Miss Rowe keeps a tidy place." "She does. You see anyone come in here after the man?" "No." "After the woman?" "No." "Anybody else today?" "No." I nodded. "If she comes back, tell her Archie Goodwin was here." "Should I tell her anything else?" "Yes," I said, thinking of the slip in my pocket. "Tell her not to comply." Her eyes narrowed. "That's what the other one wrote." "I know." I went down the stairs and out into the drizzle. On the sidewalk, I paused and lit a cigarette, because sometimes you need smoke to see what's in front of you. 2 visitors. One man who looked at a door and asked about a back way. One woman who wrote a warning and left. A missing black notebook. A list hidden in a book that wasn't hidden well. A place card sent to Voss with a line about facing the door. And Wolfe's name at the bottom of a private list that had no business including him unless someone intended to use him as more than decoration. I flicked ash into the gutter and headed for a phone booth. When I got Wolfe, he picked up on the second ring. "Well?" "Grove Street's neat, quiet, and lying by omission," I said. 2 visitors before me, a man who likes doors and a woman who doesn't like him. Miss Rowe's apartment is undisturbed except for a book that was disturbed and then corrected. I found a list. Names match Voss's circle. Notes next to each. She had them pegged. And you? Flattered I wasn't on it. Describe the notes. I did. He made a sound when I got to Brundage. "Vanity and surveillance," he said. "Charming." "And at the bottom," I added, a special instruction. "Seat wolf facing the door." Silence. And then, "Archie." "Yeah. Return. At once." "On my way." "Saul?" "Has reported. We have work." That was enough. I hung up, tossed the cigarette, and took a cab. As we pulled away, I looked back once at the building, 3rd floor rear, a window with a light that was off. Somewhere between Grove Street and 35th, the case shifted. Not loudly, not with a bang. Just enough to let me know that whatever Miss November Rowe had planned, or had planned for her, wasn't just about a dinner. It was about who got to watch the door. When I got back to the brownstone, the front room light was on, and the office door was open, which meant Wolfe was receiving, had received, or was about to receive information he considered edible. I went straight in. Saul Panza was in the yellow chair, looking like a man who had been sitting there long enough to know where everything was and not long enough to feel obligated to like it. He nodded at me. Wolfe didn't. He had the list Voss had written in front of him, along with my place card and a glass of beer he hadn't touched. "Well?" he said. I took off my coat and gave it to Fritz, who appeared as if summoned by the word "well." Then I reported, from the woman in purple down to the scuff by the door. I kept it tight. Saul listened with his head slightly tilted, the way he does when he's matching what you say with what he already knows. When I finished, Wolfe said, "The paper." I handed him the slip with "Don't comply" on it. He examined it, then passed it to Saul. "Hand?" Wolfe asked. Saul shrugged. Educated, controlled, not hurried. Could be Cormant, could be Calderon, it could be half a dozen women who learn to write before they learn to lie. "Pfui." I said, "There's more. The list in the book. I didn't bring it. I put it back." Wolfe's eyes flicked to me. "You did not bring it?" "No." "Why not?" "Because whoever looks next might need to find it, and if it disappears now, we lose the measure of how careful they are." He held my gaze for a second, then grunted. Approval, in Wolfe's language, sounds like indigestion. "Describe it again." I did, slower this time. When I got to the last line, he raised a hand. "Enough." "Saul?" Saul leaned forward. "I went to the foundation. Voss wasn't there. Cormant was. She didn't like me. That's mutual. She says the dinner goes on. She says Miss Rowe resigned because she overstepped, misused confidential information, and compromised donor relations. She says the missing notebook is regrettable, but not decisive." "Her tone?" Wolfe asked. "Confident. Too confident for a woman who's just had a director disappear." "Anyone else?" "Haft. Slick. He's worried, but he's selling calm. Says leaks happen, reputations survive, donors forget. He also says Brundage has been calling every hour and wants assurance he won't be seated near undesirable elements." "Define undesirable." Saul's mouth twitched. "Anyone who doesn't admire him loudly." "Brundage's whereabouts?" "At his club until 5. Then home." "Calderon?" "Receiving guests tomorrow for a smaller thing. Tonight alone." "Tappan?" "Harder to pin. Works odd hours. I left a note." Wolfe nodded once. "The man at Grove Street?" Saul shook his head. "No one matching that description at the foundation. But a doorman on 62nd remembers a man leaving Voss's building around 2:15. Tall, coat like it cost something, hat down, too careful." "That's our man," I said. "Visited Rowe at 2:30. "Or checked if she was in," Saul said. "Same difference if he didn't touch the door." "Not the same," Wolfe said. "A man who looks at a door and does not open it is measuring something, either risk or timing." "Or both," I said. Wolfe ignored me. "And the woman?" Saul said. "No one volunteered." "Then we will ask better questions later. Archie, the list. Voss, control and conceal." "Fitz," I said. "He came here polished." "Cormant, replace and leverage." "Also Fitz. She's ready to continue without Rowe." "Haft, broker and split loyalties." Saul said. "He smiles too much." "Brundage, vanity and surveillance." I said. "He wants to watch the room." "Calderon, house and optics." "Her place, her show," I said. "Tappan, decor and access." Saul nodded. "Designers go everywhere." Wolfe steepled his fingers. "And at the bottom, an instruction involving me. That is intolerable." I grinned. "You don't like being seated?" "I do not like being used." "That assumes she intended to use you." "Archie, a woman who writes such a list intends everything." "Then why hide it badly?" Wolfe's eyes moved to me. "Because she expected it to be found by the correct person." "That would be me? Or whoever she judged competent enough to look where haste leaves residue?" Saul said. "She didn't leave much." "No," Wolfe said. "But she left enough." He reached for the place card again. He should have been seated facing the door. Who is he? Brundage, I said. He's the one with the sightline argument. Perhaps, or perhaps not. The sentence is constructed to invite that conclusion. That makes it suspect. Saul leaned back. You think it's a signal? I think it is an instruction disguised as a recollection. To whom? I asked. Wolfe looked at me as if I had asked who breathes air. To us. I let that sit. You're saying she set the table for you. I'm saying that if she did not, then someone else has. And either way, Saul said. We're on it. Wolfe nodded. Precisely. Fritz came in then with a fresh tray and the look he gets when he has decided that crime must not interfere with cuisine. Dinner in 15 minutes, he announced. If it is delayed, it will suffer. Everything suffers, Wolfe said. That is the nature of existence. Fritz sniffed and left. I said, before dinner, one more thing. The chair in her living room was angled toward the door. Same idea as the note. Observation, Wolfe said. Control of entry. Knowledge of arrival. And the scuff by the threshold, I added. Not a struggle, a pivot. Decision, Saul said. Exactly. Wolfe's eyes closed briefly. Then she left with someone she chose, or someone she chose not to resist. Which one? I asked. He opened his eyes. We shall determine that. Saul, you will find Mr. Brundage and observe him. Closely. If he values surveillance, he will exhibit it. Archie, after dinner you will visit Mr. Voss's residence. Tonight? Tonight. Why not now? Because you will eat, and because a man who is waiting to be called prefers not to be visited until he has convinced himself he will not be. I smiled. Psychology with sauce. Impertinence with indigestion, Wolfe snapped. Go wash your hands. We ate. Fritz outdid himself, which meant the world temporarily made sense. Wolfe gave the food the attention it deserved, which meant the case had him by the throat whether he admitted it or not. Afterward, I got my coat again. Saul had already gone. Wolfe was in his chair, eyes half shut, fingers together. Archie. Yeah. When you see Mr. Voss, do not ask him whether he has lied. Ask him when. That's a nicer question. It is a more useful one. And if he doesn't answer? Wolfe's eyes opened. He will answer. Why? Because he came here. I went out, took a cab uptown, and watched the city slide by in wet reflections. 62nd Street was quiet in that way. Expensive streets are quiet. Nothing accidental, nothing loud, but everything arranged. The doorman at Voss's building looked me over and decided I was either expected or inevitable. I gave him my name. He called upstairs, then he nodded and waved me in. The elevator took me up. When the door opened, Voss was there, in shirt sleeves, tie loosened, the polish still on but worn thinner. Mr. Goodwin, he said. I was expecting your call. Change of plans, I said. I came instead. He stepped aside. Then come in. I did. And as I crossed the threshold, I noticed something that made me slow down just enough to matter. The chair in his living room, angled toward the door. I didn't stop in the doorway, but I didn't hurry either. There are moments when the difference between walking in and entering is about half a second. And that half second can tell you whether a man arranged his room for himself or for someone he expects to arrive. Voss noticed the glance. He would have. He noticed everything that might be noticed about him. Is something wrong? He asked. Only if you don't like symmetry, I said. You and Miss Rowe share a decorator. I beg your pardon? The chair, I said, nodding at it. Angled toward the door, same as hers. He looked at it as if it had betrayed him. Then he gave a short breath. I hadn't realized. That's interesting. Is it? Depends on whether you usually realize things like that. He didn't answer. Instead, he moved toward a small bar, poured himself a drink, and turned back. "Will you have something?" "No, I'm working." "As you wish." He took a sip. Not for pleasure, again for structure. He needed something in his hand. "Let's sit," I said, and took the chair that faced him but not the door. I like to know who's coming, but I like even more to know who doesn't. He remained standing for a moment, then sat in the angled chair. "That better?" I asked. "I don't know what you mean." "Sure you do. When you sit there, you can see the door. When you sit where I am, you can't." Miss Rowe thought that mattered. He held the glass steady. "Yes, she did. And you?" I thought it was excessive. "But you adopted it." "I didn't adopt it consciously." "That's not what I asked." He gave me a thin smile. "You're very direct, Mr. Goodwin." "I save time. When did you start arranging your chair like that?" A pause. Then, 2 weeks ago. "Before or after the argument about Brundage?" "After." "Whose idea?" "I told you I didn't." "Try again." His jaw tightened. "Just enough to show me the hinge." Miss Rowe suggested it. "Suggested or insisted?" "She doesn't insist. She frames. That's a polite word for it." He set the glass down. "What did you find at her apartment?" Enough to know she wasn't surprised. "By what?" "By any of this." He leaned forward slightly. "Is she in danger?" "That depends on who she trusted." "And you think she trusted the wrong person?" "I think she trusted someone. That's already a problem." He absorbed that. "You said there were 2 visitors before you." "Yeah." "The man, did you learn who he was?" "Not yet, but he knew enough to check her door and not open it." "That suggests..." "It suggests he didn't want to be seen inside, or that he knew he'd find nothing, or that he was making sure she wasn't there before doing something else." "Such as?" "Coming here." That landed. Not hard, but clean. "You think he was here?" Voss asked. "I think he might have been near here," I said. "Your doorman saw someone leaving around 2:15. That lines up with Grove Street at 2:30. "That's circumstantial." "Everything is, until it isn't." He stood and crossed to the window, then turned back. "Why would anyone come here?" "To look," I said. "At you, at your arrangements, at whether you sit facing the door." "That's absurd." "Is it?" Miss Rowe writes a list. She notes who controls, who replaces, who brokers, who watches. She writes an instruction about seating. Then she disappears. Someone checks her door. Someone comes here, and you've been sitting like her for 2 weeks. He said nothing, and I let it breathe, then shifted. "Let's make this simpler. When did you last see her?" "Yesterday morning, at the office." "Alone?" "No, Haft was there." "What was said?" "She told me the situation had escalated, that the notebook had been copied, that she had lost control of the narrative." "Her words?" "Yes." "And you?" "I told her we would contain it." "How?" "By removing her from the center." "Meaning firing her." "Meaning asking her to step aside." "Same difference if you're the one stepping." He didn't like that. It was necessary. "For whom?" "For the Foundation. Not for her." "No." "Did she argue?" "No. That doesn't fit." "She..." He stopped. "She what?" "She agreed too easily." "Better," I said. "Now we're getting somewhere." He exhaled. "She said something. I didn't understand it at the time." "What?" She said, "Then you'll have to sit where I put you." I smiled. That sounds like her. I thought it was a figure of speech. And now? I don't know what to think. Try thinking she meant it. He went still. "Did she give you anything?" I asked. "A note, an instruction, a list?" "No." "Did she ask you to come here today?" "Yes." "How?" "She called me at 11, said if anything happened, I was to go to Nero Wolfe and give him her name." And you didn't ask why. I did, she said, because he hates being arranged. I chuckled. That's accurate. Voss didn't. She also said one more thing. What? That I must not move anyone from their place at the dinner. Anyone? Yes. Even her. She didn't specify. Convenient. He looked at me sharply. What are you implying? I'm implying she built a table and somebody's going to sit at it whether they like it or not. That's nonsense. Is it? You've got 5 people with motives, a missing notebook, a disappearing planner, and a dinner that suddenly matters more than it should. And she told you not to move anyone. That could mean... It could mean she expects someone to be where she put them, I said, including you. He took that in. And you. I go where I'm told, I said, by a man who weighs 7 times my patience. That almost got a real smile out of him. Almost. Mr. Goodwin, he said, if you think I'm involved... I think you're involved, I said. The question is how. That's not an answer. It's the only honest one I've got right now. He nodded slowly. What do you want from me? 2 things. First, the truth about when you lied. He stiffened. I didn't. Don't waste it, I said. You lied when you said you weren't intimate with her. Silence. Then, quietly. Yes. How intimate? Enough. That's not a measurement. Enough to know how she thinks. Not enough to control it. Better. And the second thing? He asked. A guest list. Final seating. I can get it. Now. He crossed to a desk, opened a folder, and brought back a typed sheet. Names in 2 columns, a diagram of the table, positions marked. I took it and scanned. Brundage at the center as expected. Cormant to his right, Voss opposite. Haft 2 seats down. Calderone at the head, Tappan near the end. 1 empty seat, marked simply, reserved. For whom? I asked. For a last-minute donor, not yet confirmed. I tapped the page. That's a lie. He met my eyes. Yes. For whom? He hesitated. Then, for her. November Row? Yes, even after you fired her. I didn't remove her from the plan. Because she told you not to. Yes. I folded the paper and slipped it into my pocket. Good, that helps. How? Because now I know where everyone's supposed to be when the lie finishes. And what does that mean? I stood. It means, I said, that someone planned an evening down to the last detail. And the last lie? I looked at him. We haven't heard it yet. I went to the door. As I opened it, I glanced once more at the chair angled toward it. Then I stepped out into the hall, already thinking about who, tomorrow night, would be sitting where they were told, and who would be watching the door. The ride back downtown gave me just enough time to arrange the pieces without pretending they fit. Because that's a mistake amateurs make, forcing a picture before the edges agree. I had names, positions, movements, and a woman who had set a table and then removed herself from it. That left either a trap or a test. With Wolfe, it usually turned out to be both. When I got in, the house was quiet in the way it gets after Fritz has decided dinner has justified the day. The front room lamp was low. In the office, Wolfe was exactly where I had left him, except the beer glass was empty, and the list had been joined by 3 more sheets of paper, each covered in Wolfe's small, precise handwriting. He didn't look up. Report. I took the chair and gave it to him straight. Voss's admission, the chair, the call from November, the instruction not to move anyone, and the seating chart with the reserved place. When I finished, Wolfe finally lifted his eyes. He admitted intimacy. Yes. Degree. Enough to learn, not enough to command. His words. Self-serving. Everything he says is. Indeed. Wolfe tapped the desk lightly. And the reserved seat for Miss Rowe remains, despite her dismissal. Because she told him not to move anyone. Wolfe closed his eyes briefly, then opened them. Good. Good, I said. She's missing. Precisely. That's not good in my book. It is good in the sense that it confirms intention. Whose? Not yet determined, Wolfe said. But intention nonetheless. Archie, if a woman plans a dinner with this degree of attention to relational geometry, she does not abandon it casually. She either intends to be present or intends her absence to function. Function how? As pressure. I leaned back. On whom? All of them. That had weight. So she disappears on purpose. Possibly. And sends Voss to you. Yes. And leaves a list in her apartment that someone might find. Yes. And a warning, don't comply. Yes. And a place card with your name on it. Wolfe's lips tightened. Yes. I spread my hands. Then she's not just planning dinner, she's planning you. That is the intolerable element, Wolfe said. I grinned. You'll survive. That remains to be seen. The phone rang. I picked it up. Yeah? Saul's voice. Brundage is home. He's got 2 men with him. Not guards. Watchers. Watching what? His windows. His door. Each other. That's cozy. He's nervous, Saul said. Keeps asking if anyone's been asking about him. Anyone has? I haven't told him. Good. He also moved his dining room table. I blinked. What? Had the butler shifted 6 inches toward the door? I smiled slowly. Sightline advantage. Yeah, Saul said. Somebody's been talking to him. Stay on him, I said. Let me know if he twitches. I hung up and turned to Wolfe. Brundage moved his table. Wolfe's eyes gleamed faintly. Of course he did. Because of her. Because of fear, Wolfe corrected. Miss Rowe merely supplied the vocabulary. That puts him in play. He was always in play. I said, there's something else. The man at Grove Street asked about a back way. Yes. He didn't use it. No. Which means he didn't need to go in. He needed to know if she was there. Or to ensure she was not. Right, then he or someone comes to Voss's building. To observe. Or to confirm something already arranged. Wolfe nodded. And the woman who left the note? Don't comply. She knew enough to warn her. Or to warn us. I tilted my head. You think that note was meant to be found by me? I think Miss Rowe anticipated that someone competent would examine her apartment. Flattery again. Accuracy, Wolfe said. You are competent, though occasionally you squander it. Thanks. He ignored that. The critical element is compliance. Compliance with what? The seating, I said. The arrangement. Yes. And she told Voss not to move anyone. Yes. And warned, don't comply. Wolfe steepled his fingers. A contradiction, or a test, or a distinction, he said, between apparent compliance and actual. I let that roll. Yes, you're saying someone's going to follow the plan and still break it. Or refuse to follow it and thereby fulfill it. That's neat. It is not neat, Wolfe snapped. It is pernicious. I got up and went to the globe, spun it lightly, then stopped it with a finger. Let's line them up. Voss, connected to her, under pressure, but still following her instructions. Cormant wants her out, wants control. Haft, broker, could play both sides. Brundage, vain, now scared, adjusting his position. Calderon, hostess, controls the house. Tappan, access to everything. And Miss Rowe, Wolfe said, who has arranged them. And you, I said, who she wants watching the door. I do not attend dinners, Wolfe said. No, I agreed, but you do attend problems. He glared at me. Then after a moment, pfui. The doorbell rang. We both looked at it. No, that's late, I said. Answer it, Wolfe said. I went to the hall and opened the door. The man on the step was the kind you notice even if you don't want to. Tall, coat like it cost something, hat down just enough to be deliberate. I smiled. Grove Street, I said. He looked at me, then past me, measuring the house in a glance. "Mr. Goodwin," he said, "I believe you've been asking about me." "Not by name," I said. "You want to give me one?" "Julian Haft, Development Counsel," I said. "Come on in." He stepped inside without hesitation. That told me more than anything else. A man who hesitates at Wolfe's door is unsure. A man who doesn't is either confident or desperate, sometimes both. I took his coat and hat, and we went into the office. Wolfe didn't rise. He didn't even nod. "Mr. Haft," he said, "so you have wasted time by coming." Haft smiled easily. Too easily. "On the contrary, Mr. Wolfe, I believe I've saved some. That remains to be demonstrated." Haft sat without being invited. Another point. "I understand," he said, "that Adrian Voss has engaged you in a matter concerning Miss November Rowe." "I understand nothing," Wolfe said. "I listen." "Then listen to this," Haft said. "Miss Rowe is not missing." That landed. I said, "Where is she?" Haft looked at me, then back at Wolfe. "She is exactly where she intended to be." Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "And where is that?" Haft smiled again, but this time there was something under it. Not confidence. Not quite. "Somewhere," he said, "that none of us can reach until tomorrow evening." Silence. Then Wolfe said very softly, "Explain." Haft leaned back, crossing one leg over the other, or as if settling in for a performance. "She told me," he said, "that the evening would proceed exactly as planned. I felt it then, the shift. Not loud, not sudden. Just enough to tell me we had moved from preparation to execution. And that," Haft added, "no one would be able to stop it." I glanced at Wolfe. He wasn't looking at Haft. He was looking at the place card on his desk, and for the first time since the case began, Nero Wolfe looked not annoyed, but interested. I stayed where I was, near the edge of Wolfe's desk, because when a man like Julian Haft announces that a missing woman is exactly where she intended to be, the worst thing you can do is interrupt him too soon. People who come in with prepared confidence tend to overperform if you give them space. Wolfe gave him that space. "Continue," Wolfe said. Haft inclined his head slightly, acknowledging the invitation as if it had been formally engraved. "Miss Rowe spoke to me yesterday afternoon, after her discussion with Mr. Voss." "And why," Wolfe asked, "did she choose you as a confidant?" Haft smiled faintly. "Because I listen without reacting. It encourages disclosure." "It encourages deception," Wolfe said. "Proceed." Haft didn't flinch. "She told me the situation had progressed beyond correction, that the seating arrangement had already done its work. Which is, to reveal who would attempt to control it." I shifted my weight. "Meaning what? That people would try to move themselves around?" "Exactly," Haft said. "Or others. Or influence placement indirectly. She said the arrangement would expose intention more clearly than any direct accusation." Wolfe's eyes were fixed on him. "And she intended to observe this exposure from where?" Haft spread his hands slightly. "She didn't say." "Then your assertion that she is where she intends to be is speculative." "No," Haft said, "because she also said that if she remained visible, the plan would fail." "That is a statement," Wolfe said, "not a location." "It's sufficient," Haft replied calmly. I cut in. "So she disappears, sends Voss to Wolfe, leaves notes and tells you the evening will proceed. That's a lot of theater for someone who doesn't want attention." Haft turned to me. "It isn't about attention, it's about pressure." "On whom?" "Everyone." Wolfe made a small sound. "You repeat her language with fidelity." "I respect precision." "Or you admire it," Wolfe said. Haft didn't answer that. I said, "Let's simplify. You knew she was planning something. And you knew she intended to vanish? You didn't tell Voss? No. Why not? Because Voss would have tried to stop her. And you didn't want that? No. Why? Haft's smile thinned. Because I wanted to see what would happen. That was honest. Too honest to be comfortable. Wolfe's voice was quiet. Curiosity is not a virtue when it is exercised on human beings. It is when those human beings are engaged in manipulation, Haft said. Miss Rowe believed she could orchestrate outcomes by arranging people. I wanted to see if she was right. And now? Wolfe asked. Now I believe she was. Silence settled for a moment. Then Wolfe said, What is your interest in the outcome? Haft's gaze didn't waver. Professional. If the dinner proceeds and the merger follows, my position strengthens. If it collapses, I adapt. Adapt how? By aligning with whoever emerges in control. Opportunism, Wolfe said. Survival, Haft corrected. I said, You're a broker, all right. Haft inclined his head. I've been called worse. Wolfe shifted slightly in his chair. It was a small movement, but it meant he had reached a point. Mr. Haft, he said, you came here not merely to inform me that Miss Rowe is conducting an experiment. You came because you believe I will interfere with it. Haft's smile returned, slower this time. I believe you will observe it. That is not the same thing. No, Haft said, but it is close. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. And you prefer observation to interference? Yes. Why? Because interference would distort the results. Wolfe leaned back. You treat this as an academic exercise. Haft shrugged slightly. In a sense, and it is. And if someone is harmed? That would be unfortunate. Wolfe's voice hardened. Unacceptable? For the first time, Haft's composure flickered. Not much, but enough to register. I didn't say I wanted harm, he said. You said you wanted to see what would happen, Wolfe replied. That is indistinguishable from indifference to harm. Haft's jaw tightened. Miss Rowe is not a victim. No? Wolfe said softly. Then what is she? Haft hesitated. That was new. She is, he said finally. The author. Of what? The evening. I let out a breath. Planned down to the last lie. Haft looked at me. Exactly. Wolfe's fingers tapped the desk once. And what is the last lie? Haft's eyes flicked to the place card, then back to Wolfe. That remains to be seen. Indeed, Wolfe said. I pushed off the desk. All right, let's stop circling. And if she wants this dinner to proceed exactly as planned, and she's removed herself from it, then either she intends to return at a precise moment, or she intends someone else to take her place. Or both, Wolfe said. Haft nodded. That's possible. I said, and she told Voss not to move anyone, which means the arrangement is critical. Yes, Haft said. And she warned, don't comply. That could mean... It could mean don't follow the arrangement blindly, I said. Or don't let someone else manipulate it. Wolfe nodded slightly. Or it could mean do not comply with an instruction that appears to originate from her but does not. That stopped me. Forgery. Or substitution, Wolfe said. Haft's eyes sharpened. You think someone is impersonating her instructions? I think, Wolfe said, that a woman who constructs a system of control through placement would anticipate that system being used against her. Silence again. Then I said, which brings us back to the missing notebook. Yes, Wolfe said. The original draft notes, the unfiltered observations. Haft leaned forward slightly. If someone had those, they would know exactly where to apply pressure, I finished. And exactly whom to move, Wolfe said. Haft's expression changed. Not dramatically, but enough to show he had just recalculated something. You think the notebook has already been used? He said. I think it is being used, Wolfe replied. And tomorrow night. Will be the culmination, Wolfe said. Haft exhaled slowly. Then you do intend to interfere? Wolfe's eyes locked on his. I intend to prevent harm. That may disrupt the outcome. I do not care about the outcome, Wolfe said. I care about the integrity of the process. Haft almost laughed. That's a distinction without a difference. No, Wolfe said. It is the only difference that matters. I stepped in. So here's where we are. A dinner tomorrow night, 6 principal players, 1 missing planner who may or may not intend to appear, a stolen notebook that could be guiding someone else's moves, and a setup that depends on everyone staying in their assigned seats. Yes, Wolfe said, and someone has already started adjusting. Brundage moved his table. Because he is afraid, Wolfe said. And fear makes people predictable, I said. Precisely. Haft looked from one of us to the other. What do you want from me? Wolfe didn't hesitate. You will attend the dinner. Of course. You will sit where you are assigned. I always do. You will not attempt to influence the placement of any other guest. Haft smiled faintly. That may be difficult. Nevertheless, Wolfe said, you will do it. Haft considered that. Then he nodded. Very well. And you will inform me immediately if you receive any communication from Miss Rowe before the event. Agreed. Wolfe leaned back. Then you may go. Haft stood. You're certain you don't wish to attend? I do not attend dinners, Wolfe said. Haft's smile returned. Pity. I think you would have enjoyed this one. I doubt it, Wolfe said. Haft inclined his head and left. When the door closed, I turned to Wolfe. You're not going to let this play out from here, are you? Wolfe's eyes moved to the place card again. No, he said. Oh, good, I said, because I've got a feeling that tomorrow night somebody's going to move a chair they weren't supposed to. Wolfe's lips tightened. Yes, he said, and when they do, we shall see who arranged it, and who believed the lie. Wolfe didn't speak again for a full minute after Haft left. That's a long time in that room when the air has been stirred. He sat with his eyes half closed, fingers together, not moving except for one small shift of his thumb against his forefinger. A sign I'd learned meant he was aligning facts against resistance. I didn't interrupt. I went to the desk, took the seating chart from my pocket, and spread it out again. Let's say she's right, I said finally. Let's say the arrangement reveals intention, and then the first person to try to change anything is either guilty or scared. Yes, Wolfe said without opening his eyes, and fear is often the more useful of the two. Brundage is already scared. Brundage is vain. His fear will express itself in display, not concealment. Meaning he'll make noise. Meaning he will seek reassurance loudly and often, Wolfe said. That makes him less dangerous. Then who's dangerous? Wolfe opened his eyes. The one who does not seek reassurance. I looked back at the chart. Cormant doesn't ask. She decides. Yes. Haft watches and waits. Yes. Tappan has access. Yes. And Voss is divided, Wolfe said, which is always hazardous. I nodded. And Calderon controls the house, Wolfe said, which means she controls the environment. That is not negligible. I tapped the reserved seat. It's us and this. Still empty. Not empty, Wolfe said. Designated. For November. Or for someone intended to be perceived as November. That stopped me. You think someone might take her place? I think it is possible, Wolfe said. And if so, the deception would depend on compliance, which we've been warned against. Yes, I folded my arms. So tomorrow night, someone might try to pass off a substitute, or a message is originating from her, Wolfe said. Or an instruction. Which brings us back to the notebook. Yes. The person who has it knows how she thinks, knows what she'd write, how she'd phrase it. Exactly. And could imitate it. Precisely. I let out a breath. So we're looking for someone who can play her game using her rules. Wolfe's eyes rested on me. As we are looking for someone who believes they can. Difference? The former may succeed. The latter may fail. And which do you think we've got? Wolfe's lips tightened. That remains to be determined. The phone rang again. I picked it up. Yeah? Saul. Brundage just had a visitor. Who? Woman, late 30s, dark hair, stayed 10 minutes. November. No, not her. What happened? He let her in, raised his voice once, then quiet. She left. He called someone immediately after. Who? Couldn't hear, but he said, I won't be moved. I grinned. He's learning his lines. Yeah, Saul said, but he's not comfortable with them. Stay on him. I am. I hung up and turned to Wolfe. Brundage had a visitor. Woman, not November. Told someone he won't be moved. Wolfe nodded slowly. Good. Good. Yes, as it confirms the pressure is active. From whom? That is the question, Wolfe said. I crossed to the globe again, spun it once, stopped it. We're running out of time. Tomorrow night is the event. Yes. And you're not going? No. Then how do you plan to control anything from here? Wolfe's eyes moved to me, and for a second there was something in them I don't see often. Anticipation. Archie, he said, I shall not attend the dinner. I know. You will. I blinked. Me? Yes. As what? The entertainment. As my representative. I laughed. That'll go over well. Sorry, folks, Wolfe sent the help. You will be invited, Wolfe said calmly. By whom? By Mr. Voss. That's a stretch. No, Wolfe said. It is inevitable. He has already accepted my involvement. He will accept your presence. And what am I supposed to do there? Watch people eat soup? You will observe, Wolfe said. You will note any deviation from the arrangement. You will listen, and you will report to me at intervals. From the middle of a dinner? Yes. That's going to be subtle. You are capable of subtlety when you exert yourself, Wolfe said. Rarely, I said, but I'll try. He ignored that. Additionally, Saul will be present. As what? As a guest. Who invited him? I shall arrange it. I shook my head. You're going to arrange a dinner you're not attending. I'm going to correct an arrangement that has been compromised, Wolfe said. Same difference. No. I looked at the chart again. And the empty seat? Wolfe's gaze followed mine. Ah, that is the fulcrum. Meaning whoever occupies it changes everything. Yes. And if no one does, then the absence itself is the signal. I nodded slowly. And you think November will show? I think, Wolfe said, that she intends to complete her design. And you think someone else intends to hijack it? Yes. And tomorrow night we find out which one wins. Wolfe's voice was quiet. No. I looked at him. No. We ensure that neither wins at the expense of justice. I smiled. That's a bigger job. Indeed. There was a knock at the door. Fritz came in, not with food this time, but with a look that meant he had decided something important about the world. Mr. Wolfe, he said, a message. He handed over an envelope. Plain, no return address. Wolfe opened it, took out a single sheet, and read. His expression didn't change much, but I saw the shift. Small, precise. Well, I said. He handed it to me, typed. No signature. If you attend, you comply. If you abstain, you fail. Choose. I looked up. That's friendly. Yes, Wolfe said, and instructive. How? It clarifies the nature of the game. Which is? Compulsion, Wolfe said. I read it again. They want you there. They want me positioned, Wolfe corrected. Facing the door? Perhaps. I folded the paper. So what's your answer? Wolfe leaned back in his chair, eyes steady. "I shall do neither," he said. "Neither. I shall not attend," Wolfe said. "And I shall not abstain." I stared at him. "That's a neat trick." "Yes," Wolfe said. "It is. And how exactly do you plan to pull it off?" Wolfe's lips curved just slightly. Not a smile. He doesn't waste those. But something close. "By ensuring," he said, "that when the evening unfolds, the person who believes they control it discovers they do not." I nodded. "And that's when the last lie shows up." "Yes," Wolfe said. "And when it does." His eyes met mine, sharp and certain. "We will be ready." The next day moved with a kind of quiet efficiency that means Wolfe had already decided where every piece belonged and was now merely allowing the rest of us to discover it. At 9, Saul reported in person. He had slept somewhere, though you couldn't tell where, and brought with him a short list of movements that made the room feel smaller. "Brundage didn't leave his place last night," he said, "but he called 3 people, Cormant, Haft, and Calderon. Same message each time. He wants assurance about his seat." "Assurance of what?" I asked. "That he won't be exposed," Saul said. "That's his word." Wolfe made a soft sound. "He has understood enough to be afraid, but not enough to be useful." Saul nodded. "Cormant visited Calderon this morning, 45 minutes. They talked in the drawing room, voices low. Servants didn't hear much, but one of them caught arrangement and control." "Of course," Wolfe said. "Haft's been moving," Saul went on. 2 calls from outside lines. One to a number I couldn't trace. One to a florist." "A florist?" I said. "Yeah, that's festive. Or functional," Wolfe said. Saul shrugged. "Tappan showed up at Calderon's around 10. Carried in a portfolio. Stayed 20 minutes. Left with it." "Decor," I said. "Or access." "Or both," Wolfe said. Saul looked at me. "You're in?" "Apparently," I said. "Guest of honor." "Condolences," Saul said. Wolfe ignored us. "Archie, you will go to Mr. Voss at noon. You will confirm your attendance at the dinner. You will request no special treatment." "I never do," I said. "You will observe his reaction." "Which will tell us what?" "Whether he expects you," Wolfe said. "And if he does, then Miss Rowe has accounted for you. And if he doesn't, then someone else has." I nodded. "Clean." "Saul," Wolfe said, "you will attend as well. Mr. Voss will be persuaded." Saul's mouth twitched. "He'll love that." "He will endure it," Wolfe said. "You will position yourself so that you have clear view of the table and the entrances." "Facing the door," I said. "Yes. And you?" Wolfe settled deeper into his chair. "I shall remain here." "Not abstaining," I said. "Not abstaining," Wolfe agreed. The rest of the morning went to preparation. Not frantic, not scattered. Methodical. And Wolfe made 2 calls, both brief. One to a number I didn't recognize. The other to Inspector Kramer, who listened, grunted, and hung up without comment. That meant he'd be ready if called, which with Kramer is as close as you get to cooperation. At noon I went uptown again. Voss received me in the same room, same chair angled toward the door. This time he didn't pretend it didn't matter. "You're coming tonight," he said. "Looks that way." He nodded as if confirming something he had already suspected. "Good. No objections?" "None." "That's interesting." "Why?" "Because yesterday you might have wanted to control who attends. And today you don't." He met my eyes. "Today I want the arrangement to hold. Even if it hurts you." A flicker, then, "Yes." That was new, not the answer. The tone. "Seating chart changed?" I asked. "No." "Not even the empty seat?" "It remains." "For her?" "Yes." "Confidence she'll show?" "No." "Then why leave it?" "Because she told me not to move anyone." Still following instructions? Yes. Even after she vanished. He didn't answer that. Anyone else get instructions? I asked. I don't know. Haft? He hasn't said. Cormant? She doesn't discuss such things. Calderon? She insists the evening proceed. Brundage? He's been calling. I know. Voss looked at me sharply. You've been busy. Occupational hazard. He crossed to the desk, picked up a small card and handed it to me. Your place? I looked. My name? Clean and centered. Where am I sitting? I asked. 2 seats from Haft, across from Tappan. Nice. You'll have a clear view of the room. Facing the door? Yes. I smiled. Of course. He watched me for a second. Mr. Goodwin, do you believe she'll come? I believe she intended something, I said. Whether that includes showing up is still open. And if she doesn't, then someone else will try to fill the space she left. He nodded slowly. That's what I'm afraid of. Good, I said. Stay that way. I left him there, standing in his careful room, looking like a man who had finally understood that control wasn't the same as safety. Back at the brownstone, I changed into something suitable for a dinner where people lie politely. Saul arrived shortly after, equally adjusted for the occasion, which on him looked like a concession rather than a transformation. You ready? He asked. Always, I said. We went into Wolfe. He looked us over, not approvingly, but not dismissively either. Remember, he said, that you are not participants. You are observers. Until we're not, I said. Precisely. He handed me a small slip of paper, a number. You will call at 9:15, 9:30, and 10. Regular intervals, I said. Yes. And if something happens in between? You will use your judgment, Wolfe said. Try not to exercise it excessively. Wouldn't dream of it. He turned to Saul. You will not intervene unless necessary. Saul nodded. Define necessary. When harm is imminent. Clear enough. Wolfe's gaze moved between us. Tonight, gentlemen, the arrangement will reveal itself. And the last lie? I asked. Wolfe's eyes sharpened. The last lie, he said, will be the one everyone believes. Until it is too late. I took my hat, my coat, and the little notebook that had seen more truth than most courts. As Saul and I stepped out into the early evening, the city was already shifting toward night, lights coming on one by one like a signal. Big night, I said. Saul glanced at me. Yeah. You think she'll show? He shrugged. I think someone will. That's what worries me, I said. We got into a cab and headed toward the Calderon house. As we rode, I kept seeing that empty seat, reserved, waiting, and I had a feeling that when it was finally filled, by whoever or whatever claimed it, that was when the evening would stop being planned and start being exposed. The Calderon house was the kind of place that made you walk a little straighter without quite knowing why. Not because it demanded it. Places like that never demand, but because everything about it had already decided how you ought to behave. The door opened before we rang, and a butler with a face that had retired from curiosity took our coats and names as if both were equally temporary. Inside, the light was warm and measured, the air carrying just enough perfume to suggest money without confessing to it. Mr. Goodwin, Mr. Panzer, he said, and that was that. We were early enough to watch arrivals, which was exactly where I wanted to be. Calderon came first, naturally. Evelyn Calderon moved through her own house like a quiet assumption. Tall, composed, dressed in something that looked simple until you realize simplicity at that level costs effort. She greeted us with a smile that didn't ask anything and didn't give anything away. Mr. Goodwin, she said. Mr. Panzer, Mr. Voss mentioned you might attend. Might turned into did, I said. How fortunate, she replied, as if she meant it just enough to be polite. Her eyes moved once around the room, not lingering anywhere, but touching everything. House and optics, I thought. Wolfe had it right. Brundage arrived next, and you could feel him before you saw him. The air shifted, like a room preparing to accommodate a larger opinion. He was older than I'd expected, but not weaker, just more convinced of his own centrality. "Mrs. Calderon," he said loudly enough for the walls to hear, "I trust everything is in order." "Of course, Mr. Brundage," she said smoothly. He glanced at the room, then at the doors, then at the windows. Surveillance, just as advertised. When his eyes landed on me, they paused. "And you are?" "Goodwin," I said. "Friend of the house." He didn't like that. Not the answer. The category. He moved on, and Cormant came in with less noise but more gravity. She didn't announce herself. She displaced the air. Mid-40s, controlled, the kind of woman who didn't ask for authority because she had already decided she possessed it. Her greeting to Calderon was brief, efficient. Her glance at Brundage measured. When she looked at me, it was quick and filed away. Assessment, I thought, replace and leverage. Haft followed as if summoned by the balance of the room. Smooth, composed, the smile in place but not overused. He nodded to me, nothing more, and took a position where he could see everyone without appearing to. Broker. Tappan came last, carrying himself like a man who knew he wasn't central, but had found a way to be necessary. His eyes moved constantly, not nervously but with purpose. He noticed details, decorations, angles, access points, as decor and access. Voss arrived just before dinner was announced. He looked better than the day before, which meant he had decided something. His gaze found me, flicked to Saul, then moved on. No surprise, no resistance. He expected us. That settled one question. We were called to the table, and there it was. The arrangement, long table polished to a quiet shine, place cards set with exactness, chairs positioned not by habit but by intent. I took my seat and felt it immediately. Line of sight, angle, distance. I could see the door, the windows, the reflection in the silver. Whoever had planned this had not been guessing. Saul was 2 seats down, positioned just enough off-center to watch without being watched. Voss sat opposite Brundage. Cormant to Brundage's right. Haft near me. Tappan across. Calderon at the head. And one chair. Empty. Reserved. No name, no explanation, just space. The room settled. Conversation started, polite and measured, the kind that floats on the surface while something heavier moves underneath. Brundage spoke first, naturally. About art, about funding, about the importance of vision. He spoke like a man filling space before someone else could. Cormant responded with control, guiding topics, redirecting when necessary. Haft smoothed edges. Calderon maintained tone. Tappan listened more than he spoke. Voss said little. I watched. At 9:15 I excused myself briefly and made the call. "Yeah," I said when Wolfe answered. "We're seated. Everyone in place. No movement yet." "And the empty seat?" "Still empty." "Continue," Wolfe said, and hung up. Back at the table, the first course arrived. Conversation shifted. Subtly, but it shifted. Brundage began to glance more often at the empty chair. Cormant noticed and didn't comment. Haft watched both of them. Tappan's eyes moved to the door once, twice. Voss kept his gaze on his plate. At 9:30, I called again. "No change," I said, "but they're feeling it." "Of course they are," Wolfe said. "Pressure increases as time passes without resolution. Someone's going to break." "Yes," Wolfe said. "Observe who attempts to control the moment." I went back, and that's when it happened. Not loudly, Not dramatically, just a small thing. The butler approached the table and leaned slightly toward Calderon. "A message, madam," he said. Calderon took the envelope, glanced at it, then opened it. Her expression didn't change, but something in her posture did. A fraction. Enough. "What is it?" Cormant asked. Calderon looked at her, then at the table. "It appears," she said calmly, "that Miss Rowe will not be joining us." A ripple. Not visible, not spoken, but there. Brundage leaned forward. "Then why is her seat?" "Because it was arranged," Calderon said. "Then remove it," he snapped. "No," Voss said. All eyes turned to him. "No one is to be moved," he said quietly. Brundage's face flushed. "This is absurd. We're sitting here waiting for the arrangement to hold," Voss said. Cormant's voice cut in, smooth but firm. "Mr. Voss, this is no time for theatrics. If Miss Rowe is not attending, don't comply," I said. It slipped out before I could stop it. Silence. Every head turned toward me. Cormant's eyes sharpened. "Excuse me," I smiled. "Just a thought." Haft's gaze locked onto me, interest sharp now. Tappan shifted slightly in his seat. Brundage looked furious. Yes, Voss looked relieved. And Calderon looked at the empty chair, then at the door. And that's when I felt it. The moment. Not because anything had changed, but because everything was about to. The door opened, and someone stepped in. I didn't recognize her at first. Not because I hadn't seen her, but because she wasn't where she was supposed to be. And then she spoke. "I believe," she said calmly, "that seat is mine." November Rowe had arrived. But something about her, something in the way the room reacted, told me immediately that this was exactly the moment someone had been waiting for, and not everyone at that table was seeing the same thing. No one spoke for 2 full seconds, which in a room like that is long enough to hear truth if it's going to show itself. She stood just inside the doorway, composed, and dark hair exactly as Voss had described, gray eyes, steady and unhurried. The dress was simple, which meant it had been chosen with precision. Nothing about her asked for attention, and everything about her received it. November Rowe, or someone who knew exactly how to be her. Calderon rose first, which was correct. "Miss Rowe," she said, "we were not expecting—" "No," Rowe said gently. "You weren't." Her voice matched the handwriting, controlled, deliberate, without ornament. Voss had half risen, then stopped himself. Cormant remained seated, but her fingers tightened on her glass. Haft leaned back slightly, watching. Tappan went very still. Brundage looked irritated. "I assume," he said, "this delay has an explanation." Rowe turned her head and looked at him. Not long, not hard, just enough. "It does," she said. "And?" Brundage demanded. "Is true, and you will hear it," she replied, "when it is useful." That shut him up, which was more impressive than anything else she could have done. She moved to the table and took the empty seat. No hesitation, no flourish. Just completion. I watched closely. So did Saul. So did Wolfe, wherever he was. Because at 9:45 I excused myself again and made the call. "She's here," I said. "Describe," Wolfe said. I did. Voice, movement, posture. "And your conclusion?" he asked. "Either it's her," I said, "or it's the best imitation I've ever seen." "Phooey," Wolfe said softly. "There is no such thing as a perfect imitation." "Then what am I looking for?" "The error," Wolfe said. "There is always an error." I went back to the table. Dinner resumed, but it wasn't the same dinner. The surface held. Conversation, courses, politeness. But underneath, there was something had locked into place. Rowe spoke sparingly. When she did, people listened. Not because she demanded it, but because she didn't. She guided nothing. She adjusted nothing. She let the arrangement work. That was the first thing that bothered me, because everything I'd heard about her said she would be shaping, not observing. At 10, I called again. "She's not steering?" I said. "Of course she isn't," Wolfe replied. "Why not?" "Because she's already done so." I went back, sat and watched. Brundage was sweating now, not visibly but enough. He kept glancing at Roe, then at Cormant, then at his plate. Cormant remained composed, but her attention had shifted. Not outward, focused, calculating. Haft was enjoying himself. Not openly, but there was a quiet satisfaction in the way he observed. Tappan was restless. Oh, and Voss? Voss was watching Roe like a man trying to confirm something he already knew. I leaned slightly toward him. "You satisfied?" I murmured. He didn't look at me. "No." "Why not?" "Because she's wrong." That caught me. "About what?" "She wouldn't sit like that," he said. I glanced. Roe was seated perfectly. Posture, angle, composure, all correct. "What's wrong?" I asked. Voss's voice was low. "She always leaves a fraction of space between her hand and the table. Always. It's deliberate." I looked again. Her hand rested flat. No space. There it was. The error. I sat back, pulse ticking up just enough to matter. Across the table, Saul's eyes flicked to mine. He had seen something too. I waited. Because once you see the crack, you don't rush in. You watch where it spreads. And it did. Tappan shifted again, as then reached for his glass and knocked his fork slightly out of alignment. A small thing, but Roe reacted. Not outwardly, but her eyes moved. To the fork, then to Tappan, then back. Not much, but enough. Because it wasn't observation, it was correction, and that told me everything. I leaned back, took out my handkerchief, and used it as cover to make the call. "Go," Wolfe said immediately. "It's not her," I said. "Good," Wolfe replied. "Hand placement, reaction timing. She's performing, not controlling." "Yes." Tappan's nervous. "Yes." "Voss knows." "Yes." "And Cormant is waiting," Wolfe said. "For what?" "For the moment of compliance." I frowned. "Which is?" "The moment when someone accepts the substitution." I looked back at the table. Everyone was still seated, still playing along, still accepting. "That moment already happened," I said. "No," Wolfe said. "It has not yet been acknowledged." "And when it is?" "There will be movement," Wolfe said. I returned to the table. Dessert had arrived. Sweet, precise, unnecessary. And then it came. Cormant set down her fork. "Miss Roe," she said, "before we proceed further, I think it would be appropriate for you to clarify your position." Roe looked at her calmly. "My position is unchanged." "I don't believe that's accurate," Cormant said. A ripple again. Roe's eyes didn't move. "Then you are mistaken." Cormant smiled slightly. "Am I?" And there it was. The challenge. The demand for confirmation. The moment of compliance. Roe hesitated. Just a fraction, but enough. And Voss moved. He stood. "No," he said. Every head turned. "No one moves," he said. Silence. Then I said it. "So don't comply." This time it wasn't an accident, and this time it landed. Cormant's eyes snapped to me. Not Rose, flickered. Tappan's hand tightened. Haft leaned forward, and Voss stepped back from the table. "That's not her," he said. Everything stopped. The room didn't explode, it didn't collapse. It simply shifted, because once the lie is named, it can't hold its shape. Cormant's voice was cold. "Careful, Mr. Voss." "No," he said. "Careful is what got us here." He turned to the woman. "November," he said quietly. "Leave your hand." She didn't move. "Lift it," he said. She hesitated. Then She lifted her hand, and for a second, just a second, she forgot. Forgot to leave the space. Forgot the detail, forgot the control, and in that second, she wasn't November Rowe anymore. She was caught. Saul stood. "So?" he said mildly. "Who are you?" The woman's composure cracked, not shattered, but enough. Cormant rose. "That's enough," she said sharply. And there it was. The move, the control, too fast, too precise. Wolfe's voice came into my ear from memory, as clear as if he were in the room, the one who does not seek reassurance. I smiled. "Mrs. Cormant," I said, "you just complied." Silence. Then, everything unraveled, because the last lie had been spoken, and now, it was time for the truth. The silence didn't break all at once. It fractured, fine lines first, then widening. Cormant didn't sit down again. She remained standing, her control intact in posture, if not in timing. That was the mistake. Timing. She had moved too quickly, claimed the moment before it was hers. Wolfe would have said she had reached for the conclusion before the premise had finished speaking. "Mr. Goodwin," she said, voice level, "I don't know what game you think you're playing." "You do," I said. "You've been playing it longer than anyone here." Haft didn't move. He was watching Cormant now, not the woman in Rowe's chair. That told me he had shifted sides, or at least shifted focus. Brundage looked confused and angry, which was about as far as he ever got. Tappan looked like a man calculating exits. And Voss looked like a man who had just confirmed the worst thing he already suspected. The woman at the table sat very still. Too still now. Performance had given way to containment. Saul stepped closer, casual as ever. "We can do this easy," he said. "Name." She didn't answer. Cormant spoke again. "This is absurd, but Miss Rowe is present." "No," I said. "She isn't." Cormant's eyes cut to me. "And you're prepared to prove that?" "No," I said. "Wolfe is." That landed. Because even people who don't believe in Nero Wolfe still believe in his conclusions. Cormant's composure tightened. "Mr. Wolfe is not here." "No," I said. "He's not, but he doesn't have to be." I took out my notebook, not because I needed it, but because the act mattered. "He said the person who doesn't seek reassurance is the dangerous one," I said. "That's you." "That's an accusation," she said. "It's an observation," I replied. "You didn't ask if this was really November. You didn't question. You moved to control the moment, to define it before it defined you." Cormant didn't answer. I went on. "Miss Rowe built an arrangement designed to expose intention. But she knew someone would try to use it, use her notes, her methods, her logic. She knew someone would try to replace her." I looked at the woman. "You," I said, "had the notebook." A flicker. Small, but enough. Haft exhaled softly. "Of course." Cormant turned to him. Don't what?" Haft said quietly. "Don't recognize it." She couldn't resist. You couldn't resist. That was the first crack that wasn't subtle. Cormant's voice hardened. "You're making assumptions." "No," I said. "I'm following the arrangement." I tapped the table lightly. "Replace and leverage," I said. That was her note about you. Cormant's eyes flashed. "Convenient." "Accurate," I said. "You wanted her out. You wanted control of the merger, but you didn't just remove her. You used her." Silence. Then quietly, Voss spoke. "You had the notes," he said, and Cormant didn't look at him. "You copied them," he went on. "Circulated them, created the scandal." Still no answer. "You forced her out," he said. "And then," I added, "you plan to finish it tonight." Cormant's gaze shifted to the woman. That was enough. Saul moved just a step, enough to block one direction. Let's not make it messy, he said. The woman finally spoke. You don't understand, she said. Try me, I said. Her voice wasn't Rose anymore. The control had slipped. She asked for this, she said. That stopped me. What? Voss said. She knew, the woman went on. She knew Cormant would move against her. She knew the notes would be taken. Cormant snapped. That's ridiculous. Is it? Haft said softly. The woman looked at me. She told me to be ready. For what? I asked. To take her place. Silence. That's nonsense, Cormant said. No, I said slowly. It's not. I saw it then. Clear. She set a trap, I said. Not just for Cormant, for anyone who tried to use her system. Wolfe's voice in my head again, apparent compliance and actual. You were supposed to step in, I said to the woman. To draw the move, to force the reveal. She nodded once. And Cormant took it, I said. All eyes went to her. Cormant's composure held, but only just. You're all making a mistake, she said. No, Voss said quietly. You did. That was it, the last support gone. Cormant's shoulders shifted, not collapsing, but adjusting. You think this proves anything? She said. A staged substitution? A planted performance? Yes, I said, because you reacted to it. Too fast, too precisely, and you tried to control the narrative before it was yours. Haft smiled faintly. And that, he said, is the only proof that matters. Brundage looked around, lost. What is happening here? Justice, I said. Intellectual justice. The room settled. Not comfortably, but finally. The woman stood. My part is done, she said. To whom? Cormant asked. To her, the woman said. And then the door opened again, this time, and no hesitation. November Rowe entered. No performance, no imitation, just presence. She looked at the table, at the arrangement, at each of them. Then she sat, in her seat. And this time, her hand rested just above the table, a fraction of space. Perfect. Wolfe had been right. There is no perfect imitation. Rowe looked at Cormant. You complied, she said simply. Cormant didn't answer. She didn't need to. It was finished. Later, back at the brownstone, Wolfe sat with his beer, untouched food before him, and the look of a man who had tolerated necessity. Well, he said. It held, I said. Every piece. Of course. She planned it. Yes. And Cormant walked into it. Yes. And the substitute? A catalyst, Wolfe said. I grinned. You didn't even have to leave your chair. Wolfe snorted. A vulgar metric for success. Still counts. He lifted his glass. Archie, he said, there is a peculiar arrogance in believing one can control others without being observed. Yeah, I said. Tonight proved that. No, Wolfe said. Tonight proved that control invites exposure. I nodded. Dinner was good, by the way, I added. Pfui. I leaned back, lit a cigarette, and let the quiet settle back into the room. Case closed, table cleared. And somewhere in the city, someone had learned the hard way that if you plan an evening down to the last lie, you'd better be certain you're the one telling it.